This week, we welcome Tim Brown, Chief Information Security Officer at SolarWinds, to discuss Secure by Design, implementing lessons learned from the Sunburst attack. In the Leadership and Communications section, the CISO role is broken. 5 cybersecurity resolutions CISOs can actually keep in 2023. Are cyber attacks at risk of becoming uninsurable? And more. Business Security Weekly starts now.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we explore the business of security to improve the security of business. Your trusted source for actionable insights on leadership, communication, and innovation. Get ready for Business Security Weekly.
How is your business staying one step ahead of cyber criminals? Secure your email, applications, network, and data with Barracuda. Protect your business and go from zero to security in no time flat. Whether your team is working in one location or many, Barracuda has solutions that are easy to buy, deploy, and use. Learn how Barracuda can protect your business against ransomware, phishing, and other cyber attacks. Visit securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Barracuda, your journey secured. The shift to remote and hybrid work over the past 2 years has accelerated application development on cloud infrastructure. However, securing these new assets has lagged behind. Qualys CloudView, the next generation cloud security posture management, delivers an end-to-end multi-cloud security and compliance solution encompassing the entire application lifecycle from build to runtime. CloudView enables enterprises to assess their cloud security and compliance posture, identify risks and gaps, auto-remediate issues, proactively enforce best practices, and prove compliance and audit rapidly and efficiently. Identify your most vulnerable cloud assets by visiting securityweekly.com/Qualys. The cybersecurity landscape is full of single solution providers, making it easy for unexpected cyber threats to sneak through the cracks. That's why Fortra is creating a stronger, simpler strategy for protection, one that increases your security maturity while decreasing the operational burden that comes with it. This is all possible thanks to Fortra's best-in-class portfolio and deep bench of expert problem solvers. Fortra's integrated, scalable solutions help customers face their toughest challenges with confidence. Learn more at securityweekly.com/Fortra.
Welcome to Business Security Weekly. This is episode number 290, recorded January 9th, 2023. I am your host, Matt Alderman. Joining me remotely are my co-hosts today. First, Mr. Jason Albuquerque. Happy birthday, Jason.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it very much. Another year in the books, but this is a year without the Patriots in the playoffs. Sadly disappointed.
Again, right?
I know. Well, hasn't happened often, but...
I think the Broncos are like 7 years and counting, so I'm still waiting.
I know, but what a crazy time in the NFL. I mean, we had the whole Damar Hamlin incident with the Bills. It's just crazy times in the NFL over the course of the last couple of weeks, and we have number 1 seed in Kansas City from the AFC side, and number 1 Philadelphia Eagles on the NFC side. So we'll see how this playoffs goes.
Yes, we will. Also joining remotely today, Mr. Tyler Robinson. How are those Spuds doing, buddy?
We didn't make the playoffs again, unfortunately. I think we're still in our seed funding round.
Yes, seed. Potatoes have eyes. They're not seeds. I think they actually grow from the potato. So, yeah. It was close, though. I liked it.
It was close.
Thank you for listening to and or watching our podcast. We want to ensure that we are creating the most relevant and useful content for our audience across our network. It is crucial for us to hear that we are delivering more of what you want to hear and learn about. Please take a few minutes to complete our listener survey so that we can craft our content based on your needs. Visit securityweekly.com/survey to submit your feedback. Tim Brown joined SolarWinds in 2017 as the Vice President of Security and is now the Chief Information Security Officer for SolarWinds, overseeing internal IT security, product security, and security strategy. After the Sunburst attack in December 2022, Tim Brown led the response and remediation efforts Tim has spoken to thousands of customers and has been instrumental in all customer remediation support and services. He has worked closely with the SolarWinds CEO in designing the future state of security and their secure by design philosophy. Tim has over 25 years of experience, and his trusted advisor status has taken him from meetings with members of Congress and the Senate, which I assume were not fun, to the Situation Room in the White House. Tim, welcome to Business Security Weekly.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be here.
Now, a lot of news, a lot of coverage about the Sunburst attack. It's been a little over 2 years now. And when we invited you to come on, I thought it would be interesting to kind of do a little bit of a retrospective. Like, what was it like before, during, and after, right? There are definitely lessons to be learned from the attack. I think you guys have been great in being very open about the things that you've been doing to fix issues from the Sunburst attack. And so I want to start with, like, the assumption is, were you spending enough money on security before the breach, right? That's like the first question that pops into everybody's mind. Yeah,
that one comes up a lot, right? When you look at, what we were spending to industry, right? We were spending about 110% of what industry spends. We had a good program, right? Was the program good enough to, combat the Russian SVR? And there's a very different level of, adversary at play when you're dealing with that level. So yeah, it was my security program. Did I lose? Right? Yeah, I lost to the Russians. At least I didn't lose to somebody else. But so absolutely. But there's always things to improve in any program, right? So thinking that a program is perfect at any place, that's the first thing. You can not trust the guy who says their program is perfect, because everything has changes, everything has improvements to be done. Nothing's as simple as, you should just, patch every vulnerability as soon as it comes out. You should just, make sure every user has exactly what they have supposed to have access to at any point in time. So there's always things that you can look at. But you can also look at ways to make things harder for an adversary, right? And that's some of the things that we focused on after the incident, right? How do we become an example? How do we become exemplary from our protections, exemplary from our build processes, all of those things? And could we still be a target? Absolutely. Are we an easy target? No. Does it take more and more effort and more money to attack us? Yes. But when anybody says they're perfect, that's just, a ridiculous statement.
Did the priorities change significantly before and after, as far as like what you guys thought was minimal viable security, or the bar at which you're setting it, or programs that you were going after for a more comprehensive security platform or maturity? Like, what were some of the thought processes behind those changes?
Absolutely. So, when we look at, some of the things that changed right out of the bat, right? Things like, because you're doing a threat hunt internally for a while, you're focused on everything internally, right? We had folks like CrowdStrike in there. We had KPMG's cyber team in there, just in your shorts looking at everything. And with that, they find things. And you're not waiting for a report at the end. They're fixing things. We're fixing things. We have a running list of things that need to get addressed or fixed or run down, as far as, was this person an insider? Did they have behavior that showed an insider? We didn't see any insiders in this case, but those are things that you take care of. From a security team perspective, we'll start from IT. From IT, we implemented right away multi-tiered MFA. So YubiKeys are now for everyone, right? Not just for others. I shouldn't say everybody at this point. So everybody but sales now has YubiKeys. YubiKeys for sales is this quarter. So just off the bat, right? And mandatory for all administrative tasks, mandatory for development tasks. This event occurred in our development process, right? They didn't attack the source code control system, so they didn't go after GitHub for us. They went after the build supply chain. And so what we did was built a brand new supply chain. We basically took 6 months off of all development of new features. So everybody was working on security from December to midsummer. Part of that work was redesign how we build with assume breach involved, indicating. So if one of my people, so I'll just quickly, we do 3 build processes, pipelines, a developer pipeline that has most developers have access to, a staging pipeline that has about 30 people having access, production pipeline that has 2 people having access. Before we ship, we check those builds against each other. So we made the builds deterministic. So now you need collusion among one of my production guys and one of my staging guys to have my build be affected. So collusion necessary. So we looked at things like that. How do we make it so it's going to be much, much, much harder across the board, and put a priority there, and then make sure that we have a number of different things on that forefront to be able to make that development process as tight and as secure as possible, assuming breach. Even though this wasn't an insider, next time
did that shift in culture and that shift in collaboration and inner communication, does that tend to help and put you at a better place currently?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So 6 months off doing just security is about your limit when you're talking to your development staff. First few months, they're mad. They'll do anything you say. Then they get a little bit lax, and then they have to, then they get mad at you again. So there's always a play to get continue the efforts, but with the right backing, we continue efforts, going forward. My team, we went from a partial red team to a full-time red team. We went from 1 SOC that we ran internally to 3 SOCs. So now I do CrowdStrike for workstations. I send that to SecureWorks, and I have my SOC as a tertiary SOC, and then I use a few others for low and slow. So I have a lot of visibility. I needed visibility across the environment, so we invested there. So a number of good investments to make sure that we are going well above and beyond what is normal, right? So normal from the build process, right? Our builds are, you have to remember, 3 pipelines cost money, right? They cost money to structure, they cost money to run, they cost money from an infrastructure. So we've spent that money to be able to really show one of the kind of the best ways to develop software from a software company's perspective.
Now, Tim, one of the things that I noticed during the incident is that SolarWinds did a really good job in communication. We always see when there's a security incident, some organizations do a very, very poor job in communicating to their customers, communicating outbound, and really getting in front of the messaging. SolarWinds did a good job. They did a good job in communicating what was happening, what was happening within the organization, to their clients, et cetera. Talk to me a little bit about what was happening at an executive level during this response, because I'm sure a lot of us can learn some lessons on how to respond the right way, how to communicate the right way, what stakeholders you should have involved, and what does that cadence look like for that executive team on how you're getting updates out there?
Yeah, a couple things. So the number of things that you have going on during an incident of this level is just so great that if you don't have a good partner helping to be a quarterback of the incident, then you'll have too much to do. So in our case, it was DLA Piper. So our legal folks acted as that quarterback. So we had an IT stream, we had an engineering stream, we had a marketing stream, we had a legal stream, we had a law enforcement stream. And each one of those streams ran independently with one of our leaders, vice presidents, running that stream. So part of that stream was a marketing stream. You'll quickly find an incident at this level, you're outclassed, outnumbered, and the number of agendas that are present around an incident of this level is incredible. Just something that I didn't expect, right? So because you've got a global incident, the world's going on fire, you've got 2 marketing people trying to answer the press of the world. So we did a lot of not answering, right? We did not fight a lot of misinformation. We had one focus, right? Make sure our customers know what state they're in. Make sure we have a place that can get them safe, right? Make sure we can communicate how to get them safe. So we didn't respond to SolarWinds fixes the election, right? We didn't respond to SolarWinds offices were raided. We didn't, because we were not raided, right? We didn't, so much stuff that was just not true. But then you have agendas that are other things, right? Many people want to build their name off of an incident, and that's fine. I'm all for commercial, right? But when they do commercial for and throw out responsible disclosure, right? We had some folks doing that, just saying, "Oh, I need to tag on to this bandwagon of SolarWinds will get me press, so let me do stuff." So we tried to work with folks so that didn't happen, but from a communications perspective, customers first, right? And everything that we put out on a website, everything that we tried to update people, you're not going to have all the information, have the information you have at that point in time and put it out there, right? So try to be as proactive on comms as you can. We also found that we didn't have the right list of people to communicate to. So I had sales contact information. I didn't have security contact information. Now in every one of my Salesforce records, I have a spot for a security contact. So now I can communicate to the security contact at a company as opposed to the person who bought my product. So that was one thing we sent out emails to hundreds of thousands of folks, but we didn't have the right people to send them to. So now we do have that list, or we're working on continue to build it all the time. So that's the other part. But focus on the customers, focus on what you know, expect press to go kind of rogue everywhere. They're looking for bad news. And then just grow a hard shell because nobody will say anything nice about you for at least 4 months.
Right. But no, that's a great lessons learned, right? I mean, you went through this major incident, and one of the things that you found was, your asset as a contact list, treated as an asset, wasn't as up to date as you needed it to be, and it didn't have the right stakeholders there. So you made a change instantaneously, right? Within the organization, process change. Now you have that at your fingertips when you need it for the good
and we used it,
right?
Right. So we use it as a proactive mechanism to communicate to people.
Yep.
I've got a release coming. CVEs were fixed.
Yep.
Oh, here you go. Security contacts.
Yep.
Now you can do what you want to do with them.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the things I saw coming out of SolarWinds is now you have this initiative building a cyber resilient ecosystem. And Matt, we've been doing this long enough together that I'm a big fan of that ecosystem play, right? Getting the ecosystem where it talks to, all of your assets talk to each other. You're getting telemetry from all around your ecosystem, and you have context, right? You have the right context because you have an integration strategy. Talk to me a little bit about that cyber resilient ecosystem and that initiative that you have.
Yeah, and you have the right people talking and the right people sharing, right? And a lot of it does go up to your exec staff and your commitment to security, right? And the level of commitment is still very high across the board, no question. So I stopped a release about a month ago, right? Some pen test results came in a little late. I didn't like what they were. I said, okay, we're going to have to hold till they get fixed, and we postponed a release for a month. Now, what did I get from the upper management? I got acceptance. I didn't get pushback. I got acceptance and support. Well, this really sucks. I'm sorry we have to do it, but no question on whether we were going to do it or not. And prior, that would have been pushback. It's like, okay, are we going to do this, right? It's going to, cost us money. It's going to be harmful. It's going to make us late for something. But when you have the commitment through the chain, that resilience is not there. So being able to have that level of kind of a model in place really is, just super, helpful from how you're going forward on security, and continues to reinforce how important security is to the company.
Yeah, and that's great to hear, honestly, because so many of those business pressures are what undermine the ability of the CISO to be successful, because it's about revenue stream and keeping the business going, and don't be an impediment to the business. But when the risk is too high, you need to be able to put on the brakes. And it's great to hear that your organization is putting on the brakes when they need to put on the brakes.
Do you have advice for companies out there currently so that they don't have to go through a breach to kind of get to that level of resilience and buy-in and prioritization?
Yeah, I think clear communications, right? Clear communications about the risks that they face, the risks that they face for the business, kind of the results of what can happen. Anybody that didn't use kind of my incident to bump up their budget, shame on them. right? Because the first thing their board should have asked, could this happen to us? And if they didn't say, hell yes, of course it could happen, right? And answer, well, what should we do, right? So use different events to help you get attention, right? The boards of the world are now paying attention. The execs of the world pay attention to security. What they need to know is kind of what risk they face and what do the worst case scenarios look like, and how can we put mitigation in for those worst case scenarios. And don't cry wolf all over the time, right? Be pretty specific on what's real and what's kind of acceptable levels of risk, right? My lunch menu gets compromised. Oh, well, right? But, my source code gets compromised, or my development process, or my build, right? I have the luxury that, I build products, I ship services, right? Those are the things that we do, which is a much less than a manufacturer, much less than a hospital, much less than others. So in some ways, we look at what our crown assets are. We can get a handle on them, and be able to scope the efforts necessary in business terms. It's sometimes harder the more complex your environments are, but you should always try to relate them back to the, what will happen if, and then, test some of those hypotheses and get everybody ready for an incident too. Just be prepared to be able to make sure that you've tested for the worst case scenario. And in some environments, it's ransomware. For some environments, it's, compromise of internal systems. So all of those, but testing is critical, and getting all the right people involved gives them not just the sense of here's how we'll do incident response, but gives them the sense of, wow, if this happens, this really does affect the business, and internalizes to them that the importance of making sure that we understand and we're mitigating risk as much as possible.
Yeah, Tim, one of the first things you said early on was, we were spending 110% above industry, but we're fighting the Russians, right? And I think that's a really interesting thing for organizations to think about. It's who the threat actor is, and do you have enough protections in place to mitigate the true business risk? In your case, it was a very interesting kind of scenario, right? They wanted to get into the federal government, right? They wanted into certain agencies, and they used you as a mechanism to get there. That's a very specific kind of risk scenario that I don't know every organization thinks about in the risk management planning, but here's a real live example. And are you spending the right money in the right areas, like your supply chain, to mitigate an attack like that? And that's a very important conversation at the business level and at the board level to have. I'm just not sure everybody's having it. And this is a great example why you need to have it.
Right. And you have to realize that, I think one of the things we hopefully pointed out is that, you have to realize where you are going to be an attack. What your potential attacker looks like, and why you would be a target in different ways. And it's a hard pill to swallow, saying that you're not normal, right? You're not just you're not just a target of the normal everyday attack. You're the target of a nation state, which is thoughtful, which is patient, which runs a very good mission, and a thoughtful attacker. So we can always do exercises about the exercises that you do against the thoughtful nation state is the same exercises that you do against the thoughtful ransomware perpetrator, right? Because as a ransomware perpetrator, will I spend $1 million to get 50? Sure, right? So you have to think about it that way. Is my data worth 50 million? Okay, so somebody's going to spend $1 million against me. What would they do? Is it worth monitoring you for a year? Is it worth looking at infiltrating your email or infiltrating your systems and understanding your environment and defining a well thought out attack plan? So that's where we think ransomware will go. It has gone in a few different situations, but we do think it will go to more thoughtful. And that's a good word to think about, right? Do I say they were sophisticated? They were thoughtful and ran a very good mission. And we have to outthink them, right? We have to outthink them to be able to figure out how to defend against them. So I'm careful that I don't say that they were super innovative. They did great at things, right? They waited 14 days before they started. Smart, right? But is it hard to wait 14 days? No, it's just a simple couple lines of code. But when you think about it, wow, somebody puts a product in, they start testing it, and they say, oh, it works great. Okay, put it in production, right? And to wait 14 days, thoughtful, right? So just thoughtful.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to sometimes do is spend more time thinking, spend more time modeling, and spend more time defining your protection strategy with good forethought in place.
And I mean, to your point, Tim, so many organizations think about, are we at risk? Are we at risk? But you have to take that step back and say, are we a risk to our customers? And who would attack us, right? Because of our customer base. So what's our customer profile? Are they at risk? What are the threats that they face on the daily? And do we become a vector, right, to get those customers attacked? So you have to think about it through both lenses.
Both lenses.
You talked a little bit about the investments post-attack, the SOC, the 24/7, some of those investments you made in app and user, which are my favorite areas, right? Supply your app pipeline and the YubiKeys. So what does this secure by design process now look like for you? Like, as you're thinking about future investments, you guys have published these principles around secure by design. You know, these principles have been around for a while in certain industries, right? They've been part of it. What does this mean now for your security program? Like, how do you proactively think about the next set of security investments you need to make now, having learned all these lessons through the attack?
Yeah, a number of them. So another one that I bumped up is our GRC function, so our policy function. Not just from a policy perspective, but an audit perspective. One of the things that I'm expecting to see is that we will see legislation, regulation coming up to the software industry. I wouldn't have said this a few years ago, right? But what I see is people are going to want to audit how we go from a line of code to a product. How do we go from a line of code to a service? And understand in audit language how we do that from each step and how we can maintain a surety through those processes. And it's not just about the SBOM at the end. It's about how do you get from code all the way through to your product being produced, and how can you show your customers a level of maturity and a surety that you've done that.
Right.
So that's one of the missions that I'm on right now, right? I hired a financial auditor that's on my team, ex-financial auditor, and we're looking at going through and being able to eventually produce that documentation that goes, again, in audit language all the way through, because we think that that's where industry is headed. We think we're going towards regulation.
Yeah.
So that's one from the security team side.
Yeah.
Right. The other is,
hold on one second there, Tim. I think it's important for people to understand. It's not just about the SBOM. It's about the entire process and certification of that process flow. Almost like a SOC 2 for your CI/CD that produces the SBOM, right?
So yeah, an SBOM. So one of the things, I coined this thing a supply chain attack on day one. The reason why I coined it a supply chain attack was sort of wrong, right? I called it a supply chain attack because they did not attack my source control system, but they attacked my build system before I got it out to product. So it's part of my internal supply chain. What I didn't realize is that my product was part of so many larger supply chains, right? Power and energy, manufacturing. We sit in the middle of all of those. So when we look at the supply chain, it's important to think about the little supply chain that's the SBOM and how I produce software, and then the big supply chain of where I fit in the middle of the big ecosystems. And both of those need some work, right? One of the reasons why we did not show up as a critical software vendor for many of our larger customers, because we didn't cost enough. Okay. So our spend, so you got, you're a power grid. You're right. You're a power grid. You're spending millions. Oh, this little tool that does IT stuff. Oh, you spent 10 grand on it. You spent 50 grand on it. Well, that doesn't enter into anything. How could it be critical? Right. in reality, we look at it and say it was critical because it had access to the back end system. So we need different criteria when we look at what becomes critical. CISA and others are doing a good job on trying to start making people think about what critical is. But supply chain itself, much more than the SBOM, right? SBOM's a good point, but if we fix the SBOM for every piece of software produced, we don't fix the big supply chain, right? And we don't truly assess the risk. One of the reasons why I say this should be a wake-up call, the Sunburst incident should be a wake-up call to everybody, is because it could have been worse, right? The payload that they put in required connection to a command and control server. What if that payload was controller code, right? What if you would have had another Stuxnet on your hands and at greater scale? So it should really be considered a wake-up call for, everybody to say, we have to look at supply chain. We have to look at who has access. We have to look at the bigger side of it, and kind of use it to move everybody in the industry forward.
Yeah, agreed. You had another point before I cut you off, but I wanted to dig there a little deeper because it's been a topic over the last couple of years around the SBOM, and that clarification I think is really important for people to think about the broader supply chain. But you had another point on secure by design. I wanted you to
secure
finish.
by design continues forward, right? It's not something that ends, right? It is, taking assumed breach into everything that we do. It is bumping up our levels of capabilities from an IT perspective. It is helping the industry is a big part of it, right? How do we help and communicate to the industry and help them learn from the lessons that we have? So secure by design, I consider an umbrella. And underneath that umbrella is, each one of our functions of, how we keep security in mind. Then how do we get more defensive programming within our products themselves, right? How can we become truly secure by default and then have the users need to take actions to make us less secure, right? That's for both on-prem and some of the cloud products, right? Today, being an administrator of a solution allows you to do a lot of things without kind of sufficient warnings on the back end, right? Of, hey, you do this, you can, right? But we're going to warn you and warn you and warn you and warn you. You don't want your software on the open internet for everybody to see, right? So I think as software producers, we can do a better job of secure by default and then making the users more accountable when they change things beyond defaults, right?
Right.
So that's some of the things we're doing product-wise to just make ourselves a little bit more secure by default. And having, again, not depending on the expertise of the customers to make sure that things don't happen. In our incident, you had to connect to an unknown command and control server. Many of our customers, that was just impossible, right? They said, yep, I'm configuring the firewall to say my network control software can only talk to update.solarwinds.com. Those folks were fine because they couldn't get to the command and control server. But it wasn't everybody. How do we get to the point of making it so that it's much harder to make configuration mistakes?
Right.
And I love the fact that you're bringing the assumption of breach back into context for everybody. I mean, this isn't new. I remember Kirk Bailey in 2004 when he was the CISO of the city of Seattle talking about assumption of breach, right?
Yep.
It makes you take a more proactive stance. Instead of a defensive stance, you're taking a more proactive approach to your security program. And it's something that I latched onto in the early 2000s. So I'm glad to see you bubbling that back up again because it's an important perspective to have.
Yeah, it is. And individuals as well as systems as well as applications, right? It's like, okay, if this gets breached, what does that mean? How can I limit what occurs based on it, right? How can I make sure that maybe they can't, an individual has still is important, right? But maybe we can put safeguards against that individual so that there has to be two keys to make a change. So the assumed breach exercises really do help a great deal. And a lot of times it is thought exercises, right? So, don't give up the thought exercises to at least understand that, this system has access to everything, or this person has access to everything. If they are compromised in whatever way they are, how do we limit what they can do, right? How do we limit the exposure that we have?
Even if you only spent $10,000 on it, right? It's not a dollar.
There you go.
It's not a money
It's
conversation.
not a dollar. It's not a money thing. Absolutely. Not a money thing.
Tim, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your experiences on Business Security Weekly.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
There is a link to the Secure by Design principles in the show notes if anybody wants to get that information. We're going to take a quick break and then cover the leadership and communications articles for this week.